As the world continues to evolve at lightning speed, it is crucial we keep up with the changing market. And that is why we have Accelerate, to help you guys plan your next steps and be successful together.
Yes, and for our final speakers this morning, we have a real treat for you. I'd like to welcome out Amanda Baldwin, CEO of Supergoop, and Ann Chung, Managing Director at Blackstone. Both of these women are absolutely changing the game, and I cannot wait for you to hear more. Let's welcome out Amanda and Ann.
Woo!
A lot of pattern going on here, Amanda. Maybe
a bit of overkill, but
it a little bit. Sorry about
enthusiasm for being here.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. For those that don't know me, I am Ann Chung, the Global Head of Consumer for Blackstone Growth. I lead our investing in consumer brands at Blackstone, so brands like Oatly and Spanx, and I'm super excited and very happy to be here to introduce you all to Amanda Baldwin, our CEO at Supergoop. So to start, Amanda, tell us a little bit about Supergoop and about yourself.
Good morning, everyone. First, I can't actually see everyone out in the audience, but how many people are wearing sunscreen right now? All right, so we've got some work to do. I love that. That's opportunity. But to tell everybody a little bit about Supergoop, I'm the CEO. We have an incredible founder, Holly Thagard, who had a friend who was diagnosed with skin cancer at age 29. It can happen to 1 in 5 people in this room, so remember that as you listen to me today. And she decided to start a business to change that. And that's still our mission today. Our mission is to change the way the world thinks about sunscreen so that the next time I ask that question, everybody's hand goes up. And really, we believe in doing that through innovative products, an incredible brand, and really having people fall in love with a new part of their routine. I definitely, I joined the brand about 7 years ago. My background is in beauty and sort of running in bigger companies as well as in investing. And this has sort of been a dream come true to get to lead this brand and to really watch it just kind of put a whole new category onto the scene and get people talking about something that they really weren't before. But it really comes from those origin stories. It comes from that place of mission. It's still really important to us to change perceptions around sunscreen and really have people actually fall in love with the product.
And Amanda, I mean, you are part of arguably one of the most competitive environments out there when you think about just the sheer number of products that are available and just the number of brands that pop up every single day. Tell us a little bit about, what makes Supergoop and you and your products stand out, especially when we think about how it's a little bit hard to touch and feel in an e-commerce setting.
So there are a couple of things that really struck me about Supergoop when I met Holly and I heard her story. And anyone who wants to hear the full story, she did a How I Built This podcast. I highly recommend it. It's one of the best stories of entrepreneurial grit I have ever heard. And there were 3 things that really got to me and I think that continue to set us apart. First was that the power of sunscreen is scientific fact. It is true that 1 in 5 people will be diagnosed with skin cancer, that comes from the sun, and that 90% of the signs of aging come from the sun. And I had been in the beauty industry, I knew skincare, and I actually was always asking, why doesn't everything have sunscreen in it? Turns out that you need deep product expertise to figure this out. And that was the other thing that Supergoop has, 20 years of experience formulating product and formulating product in a different way and really kind of pushing the boundaries of what was expected out of the category. And the last was a magical brand. And brands are things that I'm sure many people in this audience know all about, and they're hard to put your finger on. You kind of either have it or you don't. It's some sort of combination of origin story, creation myth, I often call it, that comes from a founder, amazing aesthetics, a great name, a reason for being, these things that when I was at LVMH, we learned a lot about brand DNA and codes, and that may resonate with some of the marketing folks in the room. And Supergoop just had all of these building blocks of what I thought could be the next billion-dollar company and brand in our space. It wasn't going to be easy because we had to actually get people to pay attention to us a little bit and actually care about sunscreen. but I was really excited to see what we could do. And I think when you combine all those things, you have a real opportunity for scale. And I think it's never been easier to launch a brand. You know, you can put up a website, you can put up a social media channel, but it's never been harder to scale something. And I think you need that mix of brand, mission, purpose, product, and something that actually every single person in this audience can use and love. You know, we have 50 different formulas now nearly because we don't believe there's one size fits all.
I second the promotion on the how I built this podcast. Holly has an incredible story, and it's one of the things that compelled me when I met Holly and yourself about this business was the purpose and the brand and everything that you've built. And I'll put in a plug here for the great folks at Pattern and Enlisted. If you guys were around yesterday and saw Bo speak about brand and desirability and craveability, I think, you know, Supergoop is one of these example brands that has all the different layers of that pyramid that Bo was talking about yesterday. So it's one of the great things about Supergoop. You know, one of the interesting things that I also thought about when we met was, for the first time, was, you know, we are at an e-commerce conference. Supergoop does have a great presence from a DTC perspective. Why did you all make the strategic decision not to just go all in DTC and become more of an omni-channel brand, and e-commerce became more a part of the strategy rather than the whole strategy? What was the thought process behind that?
Well, we had 100 shelves in Sephora when I started, and you do not let that go. So I think some of it was by default in some ways, because we already, and the brand was created back in 2001 and first launched in 2005. So it had a lot of history before probably a lot of the words that are being thrown around this conference even existed. So there was no Shopify, Instagram, Amazon, any of these things when Holly, there was luckily Google, because that's how she found her first chemist, but you know, that stuff just didn't exist. And so when I started, we did have a wholesale presence. I came out of the beauty industry where I knew the power of Sephora. I knew the power of a retail partner that could really help you put your brand on the map. And I really believed that it wasn't about either or. It was like best of both worlds. Now, one of my first things was our website was a WordPress website. And so I was like, okay, we could probably upgrade this a little bit. So that was a first project for us. But you know, the other thing that really struck me about the era of DTC brands was that I came out of private equity originally, which you know and appreciate, and there was this thing called profit, and I didn't understand why nobody wanted it. And so I felt like, gosh, you know, can we try and figure out how to build a brand in a unique way? And I think the last thing was that we were creating a category, and we needed to go to where the consumer was. We couldn't necessarily expect them just to come to our own website. And so all of that together, but I think I'd probably have to say that it was those 100 shelves that I knew that just, those are precious.
I have a follow-up question to that, because I think we talk a lot about this. How do you think DTC plays, and what's the role of DTC play as you think about kind of the overall channel strategy for the business?
I think it's extraordinarily important. I think, you know, and I've been in this beauty world and launched a lot of first websites for brands, and it's always your best expression of yourself. I think that never goes away. I think you do have full control over what you're saying. It is still you know, it's not three-dimensional in the same sense as the touch and the feel as you were speaking about, but what you can do with a brand. And I think for us, as we're really looking forward, and I think we're going to talk a little bit more about this, of kind of what's the future also, is there's a lot that's being rewritten about how big can that business be, how much do you want to invest in it. I think of it as it's often the first touch point that someone has with a brand, and so how do I bring you into the story and really share with you why you should care? It's also your most loyal consumers. So these are the people that are coming back time and time again. So how do you give them something special? So it's almost like this sort of dumbbell approach of one end or the other. And of course, there are people in between. I think there's so much exciting that's going on now that allows you to actually create unique experiences for your different consumers.
I think one of the more impressive things also about Supergoop and the brand that you're building is that the consistency of how the brand shows up across different channels and different ways that we think about marketing. So sort of thinking a little less on like the actual e-commerce and transactional side, thinking more on the digital side. How do you think about the role of digital from a marketing perspective and where that plays relative to how you show up, in real life and in other places that people interact with your brand?
I think this goes back to the magic of a brand, and that if you have a really rich story and a very clear sense of self and a very clear sense of your aesthetics, the most fun thing you can do as a marketer is figure out how to bring that to life in different ways. And we have an amazing team who truly is best in the business at this. And there's now so many different choices, but I think you are trying to take the brand and have it feel relevant, and what feels relevant on Instagram is different than what feels relevant on TikTok, is different than Snapchat, and then Amazon, than your own website, than Sephora.com, Ulta.com. Showing up as an ad on, we just did a big program with New York Times, and that was both digital. And then for us, we love the physical. And I think that these lines are really blurred, and I wish there was a better word for it. It's just your brand. It's just your consumer. It's just your experience. I think we sometimes think so much about industry terms, and I always try and go back to, well, what's the consumer gonna do? And I always think about, and I love to talk to people about, well, it's the number one question I'll ask someone if they say, oh, I love Supergoop, is, well, how did you hear about it? Where, how? And inevitably, it's often on a digital channel. I think I saw it in the green room, there was a big chart up here about social media and YouTube ads, and that usually starts it, but eventually you gotta figure out how to get that product in someone's hands.
It's interesting because that you mentioned social media as kind of one of your drivers on the digital side, because I've sat in a few panels over the last couple of days, and I think one of the most frequent questions that comes up is around the role of social media and social media platforms, and specifically the use of influencers as well. I'm curious how you think about social media, what it plays in your overall marketing strategy and your influencer strategy specifically, and then how do you measure the impact of that to your business?
So we often talk about putting a megaphone to our message, and that's exactly what a great influencer can do. And I think it also goes back to this idea of meet the consumer where he or she is. Don't expect them to come to you. And that's exactly what an influencer marketing strategy is. It's like, well, somebody's already listening to this person. They value their opinion. They're following them in some way, shape, or form. And if they have an authentic, we believe very deeply, and we don't work with anybody just, to have an exchange of money and have a financial transaction. It always comes from somebody who's already using the product, who loves the product, who believes in our mission. And they've been a really important part of what we do, and up and down the scale, to mega people all the way down to micro influencers. And there's a team who would be able to speak to it much better than I can, but it's certainly an important part of our strategy. And it's certainly playing out differently on Instagram than it is on TikTok, and how those platforms work and the algorithms that drive them actually necessitate a different type of strategy around influencers. I guess the thing that I would say is that marketing tools will always change. I started in this industry with department stores and magazine ads, and now we're using words that, again, even TikTok, like how many people were talking about that even a few years ago? And I expect that there will be things that aren't even in our vocabulary now that will come to play. And so I think when you're building a brand, it's really important to build something that exists above any of those things. I think there's certainly brands that kind of skyrocket on certain platforms, but what's going to happen when the world moves to the next thing? And so I'm always thinking about, like, what are we creating that lives beyond that lives above that? And also kind of always keeping on the lookout for what's next. We tend not to feel like we need to be the first mover, waiting for something when it feels like you can get scale out of it, because it takes a lot of time and effort to get good at these platforms. But so we watched TikTok for a year before we really got involved, and then I will never forget looking at my team like, okay, guys, all in, let's do this, because this is really scalable now. So that's the other potentially piece of advice I'd give people.
I'm going to go a little off script here and ask you, because I think one of the really interesting things about what you do on social media is that you create content that has a virality to it. How do you think about that, and how do you think about creating that type of content? How do you think about creating viral content that people can consume?
Everybody always wants, oh, how do I create viral content? I don't think anybody knows the day they create a piece of content that it's going to go viral. I think it's all about it being authentic to your brand and doing something that feels right. I think being in touch with culture. I think brands stay relevant and they stay desirable because they have a cultural voice. So TikTok, things change so fast. And the last thing I would say is it definitely should not be me. And so finding a team that is good at this, and I think, it's been one of the really interesting things to watch evolve in our own business is as people have grown up in the organization, they pass the torch to the next generation because the women who now lead our marketing team are amazing millennials who are dynamos at Instagram, and now they're learning that they have to pass the torch to get great content on TikTok.
What do you look for in that team? Because to me, I think it's hard because there's the industry, and to your point, TikTok has only been around for a couple of years, or we haven't really talked about. Like, what are the skill sets that you're looking for in building that team?
I think, they're creators of their own right. And I think that you have to get really, I think one of the things that brands and marketers have had to get a lot more comfortable with is the idea of letting go and really just trusting your team to understand what the brand is and to speak their own language. So, I mean, people will come in, we have a lot of people who start as interns and then they become full-time and they get to trial and error. And some of that's actually the beauty of digital is you can try a lot of things. I think you can't be afraid to make mistakes. You cannot expect every piece of content to be a bullseye. And how do you sort of find that balance between testing and learning, but also protecting your brand? I think it comes also from having we give a lot of freedom within a frame, so to speak. So there's a very specific strategy about this is the purpose of this. What's the job to be done? We talk a lot about. And then you got to let somebody else take over.
That's great. I think one of the other topics that have come up a lot in the last couple of days is Amazon and the role of Amazon. How do you think about Amazon? What does it play in your business? What role does it play in your business? And how do you think about managing that piece of the business differently than the rest of your business?
So I've always believed that Supergoop is not a typical beauty brand, and probably our history on Amazon is illustrative of that. We started on Amazon for the simple reason that getting a bad batch of sunscreen is something that we can never have happen. So it was really a defensive strategy around making sure that there was not counterfeit product, and the only way to solve that problem was to engage directly with Amazon. And then it turns out that sunscreen has a sort of moment of need to it that's very immediate. And we sit primarily in prestige retail channels like Sephora and Ulta, but they don't necessarily allow us to answer the question that often gets answered at the drugstore, which is, I need it now. And Amazon is our answer to that. And that business has grown extremely well in a very natural way. Again, I always go back to one's own behavior. I can think of 3 orders I've made on Amazon in the last 2.5 days. And so everybody is there. And I think when you look at where people are searching for products, where their sort of first place that they go, the convenience that it offers is fantastic. Our brand also appears so much better because we are directly involved. But look, it's a little counterculture in the beauty industry to be on Amazon. We were probably one of the first brands that was there.
That's great. And does it compete with your other channels? How do you think about what it does and what it adds?
So I think a lot about Amazon as the people who were already there looking for our category. So we call them in-aisle shoppers. So somebody who is going on vacation tomorrow and is like, I forgot my sunscreen. I want them to buy Supergoop, not something else, or to, God forbid, go without it. So we've got to be there to answer that question. So I think if you believe that, then you believe that this is something that's truly incremental, that person was going to buy something else if they didn't buy your product. I think that, and for where we are as a business, and I say this to the team all the time, is our number one job is to get more people wearing sunscreen. We're not competing with each other. And the minute that we start thinking about that, we are not going to be successful. We've got to grow the pie. We have to have more awareness. I mean, look at the hands that were raised in this room. That's our bigger challenge. And to really just stay focused, I think a lot of businesses, look, you want to optimize for the best experience for the consumer, for the most profitable experience for your business, but at the same time, you can't totally control that. So my philosophy is, like, if they're buying Supergoop and wearing sunscreen, then we'll take it.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked a lot about e-commerce and DTC. We've talked about digital marketing and Amazon. I'm curious, as you think about e-commerce, digital marketing, all of these things that we've touched on, what are you seeing in the future? What kind of trends do you see, and what are you looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last 5 months of the year have been really interesting because we've now lapped the last quarter of being in our homes. And so I think the world seems to still be shaking out to see what is going to be, again, I follow the consumer, so where are people going to shop? I think there's definitely been a rebalance in our business back to stores. Stores are as strong as ever, retailers as strong as ever. I think the desirability of an in-person experience is very real in our category. And I think I'm still waiting to see what that balance will come out in terms of what's going to end up on DTC versus one of our retailer sites versus Amazon. And again, I really let the consumer guide us. So I think probably it's going to become more balanced than the DTC era because I think that also the cost of marketing to drive directly to your site has skyrocketed, and that's changed really how people are thinking about profitable growth on their e-commerce sites. And I think Amazon is definitely one to watch. I think in our category and in our business, we're going to see more and more people shopping that way. So I think it's a really important part of any strategy.
So we've officially been partners in this marriage for about 15 months now, and I've been able to see and watch you grow as we've been working on scaling and growing the business overall. We've launched in different channels. We've tried new things from a marketing perspective, and I've watched you really build out a team as well. And this is just in the last 15 months. I mean, you've been at the helm for 6 years at this business. You've grown it from a tiny niche cult brand to something that is in thousands of doors today, that is becoming a household brand name, which we're very excited about. I think that people will be curious to know a little bit about your leadership style and what principles guide you. How do you think about decision making, and just how would you overall characterize your management style?
A work in progress. I think that leadership, I think, is a skill. I think some of us are born wanting it more, wanting to sit in this seat more, having a desirability for that, which I think it definitely requires because it's not easy. But I think you get better about it every single day, and I take it as my job to be better at it every single day. So I would first say work in progress. I think it's my job as a leader to sort of help this business and help the people that are this business do things that they never thought that they could. I think that's the essence of what it is. And I think that what that takes is sort of a combination of boundless optimism. You have to always believe, and a willingness to never give up because you're at the front and you're kind of going through and whacking down whatever needs to get whacked down and pulling people up, and you just can never let go of that. I think it takes a lot of calm. I think that the last few years have thrown at me, I never know what's going to hit me on a Monday morning, and you just have to be able to take a deep breath. And I was a gymnast growing up, and I always tell this story that you don't get good at gymnastics if you're not really willing to fall, and that's how you learn. And so I've learned to fall, and I've learned to get up, and I hope that transfers to the people around me. And I think that there's one of the things that I've been very, I think, excited about in terms of how leadership has evolved in the last few years has been that there's now this place to be really human, and that for me, I always thought I wanted to be a CEO. I don't know. I wrote my little business school essay about that, but I think I wasn't sure how I was going to do it because I'm not necessarily someone who is a grandiose speaker and is going to get up in the soapbox and kind of rally the troops in the more traditional sense. But I think the world now plays to maybe some of my own strengths, which are really kind of looking at every person and thinking about them and really trying to, I feel like it's my first job to create an amazing company to work at, and then the business will perform, not the other way around. And I think I always sort of come at it from that. And just enjoy the journey. I'm working on that. There's always something more to do. But I love the people that we work with, and I love this brand so much, and I feel lucky to lead it.
Well, as a friend and business partner, I think one of the other things that I would add is both your humility, but also your willingness to come at this from a partnership perspective and be willing to accept help and guidance from others, not just from me, obviously, but from all of the leadership people that you're surrounded by who have done great things. I think that it's been a great partnership to work with you. I've been so impressed by everything that you've done and been able to keep everything together and to grow this business in a very tumultuous environment in a highly competitive space and build a fantastic team. So I think it's impressive. And then transitionally, I think one of the big themes for this conference for the last couple of days has just been about how people slow down. It's been a very busy couple of years. There's been a lot that everybody has had to deal with. Burnout is real. How do you slow down? How do you take time for the most important things in your life? And how do you just sort of decompress?
I think two things. I think I have a son who's turning 9 next week, and he's taught me to slow down because you have to slow down to be a mom. And I think that, there's nothing like coming home and seeing him and sort of feeling like everything else falls away. And figuring out how to juggle it all and make it to the book fair before you make it to the airplane and all those things, I think has been really impactful for me. And I also have found that I have to take time to think. So I am now known around the office that I walk to work, and it's like become my meditation. And it started in COVID because I wasn't going to get on the subway, and it sort of stuck. And it's really become this space that I find that we have so much information coming at us every single day that just turn it off for a little bit. And it's amazing what your brain will do. Sometimes I listen to a podcast, sometimes I take a phone call, and sometimes I just move. And I think that's when sometimes the best ideas come to you and you just kind of feel in a different space. So everybody has their version of that. And I think it's meditation, but in a different sort of way. I was never a good meditator because I was always thinking about what was next. But I found this space to be really helpful.
Knowing where you live and knowing where your office is, I will tell
an
you
hour.
that is not a short walk. Well, I'm going to close with a plug here that this is Melanoma Awareness Month, so everybody wear your sunscreen. And one of the funds that we are supporting, or one of the nonprofits that Pattern and the Accelerate conference is supporting over the next couple of days is Jack's Fund, which is a fund that supports melanoma awareness. So if you were there last night or if you still have your casino chips, you can put them against Jack's Fund as well. And Amanda had some closing words.
Rumor has it also, if you look under your chairs, there might be some Supergoop gift cards that my team sent. So I have no idea how many of them there are. But also, if you use them between now and Monday, I love watching
like
everybody.
Where's Waldo?
Yes, there's enthusiasm for this. If you use them between now and Monday, we're on Friends and Family. It happens once a year, so get it for Memorial Day.
Wear your sunscreen, everybody. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.